What's the first thing you think of when you hear the term video game? What immediately pops into your head? For some, it might be a shooter, an arcade game like Space Invaders or Pac-Man, maybe a fighting game like Street Fighter, an RPG, or an adventure title like Zelda. My mind immediately jumps to platformers, in my opinion, the quintessential video game genre. The very concept is so accessible. You control a character and navigate them to the end of a level, overcoming obstacles by jumping over them, on them, or incinerating them. And for a while, platformers were like the only genre in gaming. Alright, that isn't true of course, but you get what I mean. If you were a game company in the 80s and made a game where you couldn't jump, people would look at you funny. With there being so many platformers released across the past several decades, it's no small feat answering the question, which is the best of the bunch? I'd be crazy if I tried answering that question, but I can at least talk about a series that I believe comes close and stands tall among the greats. And in fact, one of the games in this series, the one I'll be going over today, happens to be the very first game I ever played. Yeah, my first game starred an ape. The Donkey Kong Country franchise doesn't contain a single entry that's anything below greatness. To be fair, there's only like 5 mainline games, but I consider 2 of them to be near flawless and the other 3 aren't too far behind. If anyone is wondering, no, I won't be looking at the Donkey Kong Land games, nor will I be looking at DK64. I've never played the Land games, and I feel that 64 would be out of place if I stick it in the middle of a retrospective focusing on side-scrollers. Also, knowing me, I'd want to 100% 64, and I just don't have it in me to torture myself, okay? Basically, I'm only looking at the titles that have country in the name, the Rare Trilogy and the Retro Studios Duology. For the first 3 games, I'll be reviewing the original versions. They look nicer, sound better, and to put it bluntly, I just feel like it. I'll still try to mention some of the added bonuses exclusive to the GBA versions though, especially for the first game since I did grow up with it after all. With all that out of the way, let's get this show on the road. This is the Donkey Kong Country Retrospective. For those of you who don't know what a Donkey Kong is, congratulations, you're likely a fetus. Donkey Kong is one of the oldest mascot characters in gaming, clearly inspired by and partially named after the Universal monster King Kong. This actually prompted Universal to sue Nintendo for copyright infringement, a case that Nintendo won. Fun fact, Kirby was named after Nintendo's lawyer in this lawsuit, John Kirby. And here I thought he was named after the vacuum brand. DK made his video game debut when Nintendo's golden boy Shigeru Miyamoto was tasked with restructuring the arcade game Radar Scope to be more appealing to American audiences. Radar Scope then turned into Donkey Kong, where ironically Donkey Kong wasn't even the protagonist. Instead, players controlled Jumpman in a set of 4 bite-sized obstacle courses to save the damsel in distress Pauline, who's being held captive by the ape. Donkey Kong was such a huge success that a year later Nintendo made Donkey Kong Jr., which expanded on the gameplay of the original and made Jumpman a douchebag who tries to murder a toddler. Both of these are quite fascinating to this day. I mean, you can beat them in less than 5 minutes, but they're neat distractions nonetheless, and compared to Pac-Man over there, these definitely have more meat on their bones. Donkey Kong 3 on the other hand is a very different kind of game. You play as this kid, killing bugs and blowing smoke up DK's ass. I personally couldn't get past the first level, I found it to be pretty boring. Donkey Kong 3 came out in 1983, and if you know your history, then you know that this was the start of the great video game crash caused by an oversaturation in the market of low-quality software and hardware. Looking at the majority of Atari games in the late 70s and early 80s, I'm surprised this didn't happen sooner. Nintendo is recognized as the savior of the gaming industry because they made this little doodad called the Nintendo Entertainment System and a 40 million copy selling sensation, Super Mario Bros. If you didn't have Super Mario Bros. In 1985, there's the door. Nintendo essentially made Jumpman, now named Mario, the face of their company and the face of gaming as a whole. Meanwhile, Donkey Kong was probably in a landfill somewhere along with copies of E.T. and that one racing game with math. Today, that landfill is the new home of F-Zero. For the next decade or so, Donkey Kong was nowhere to be seen. Okay, that's not exactly true since they did port the 3 arcade games to the NES. The character was evidently still on Nintendo's mind, but they never made a brand new NES Donkey Kong game. A couple of years later, Sega threw their hat into the ring with the Genesis. But what about the Master System, said no one ever. The main appeal of the Genesis was its graphical fidelity. The NES had 8-bit graphics and the Genesis doubled that number to 16. I still have no idea what the hell this means, but look at the pretty colors. Nintendo retaliated in 1991 with their next-gen system, appropriately coined the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, a 16-bit powered console made to compete with that one system with all the tumors sticking out of it. Both companies went to great lengths to prove that their system was more powerful. During their quest to take down Sega, Nintendo met with British developer Rare. They had created an eye-catching boxing game demo that used pre-rendered 3D visuals. And just like that, Rare essentially became a second-party developer after Nintendo bought a large stake in the company, granting Rare full access to a number of their IPs. Likely because they felt bad for the long-forgotten icon, they decided that their first project would be a platformer starring Donkey Kong, using their experience with 3D graphics to push the SNES to its limits. Basically, everything in the game was created as a 3D model first, before being converted into a 2D sprite, and the end result is something I'll give my opinion on later. At the time, there's no doubt that this was a head-turner. A year of development later, Donkey Kong Country was released to the masses on November 21st, 1994 in the US. It sold 500,000 units in its first week alone. It proved not only to be an impressive graphical showcase for the Super Nintendo hardware, but it was also a great game on its own. I grew up playing the game on the Game Boy Advance, but even before that version, DKC was reworked into a Game Boy Color title to give portable players a slice of the pie. Not like Donkey Kong Land, which was more of a reimagining of the Country series for the original Game Boy. This was the complete DKC experience, except not really, because oh my god, it looks fucking putrid. As I mentioned, for this video and for the next 2 videos, I'll be playing the Super Nintendo version, specifically via the Nintendo Switch Online Super Nintendo app, which holds all 3 games, because I love disgusting borders I can't turn off. Nothing a little bit of editing can't fix. I have played this game so many times. Like Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country is a game I can never tire of. Of course, my nostalgia for it is a key factor, but if the game didn't still hold up, I would not revisit it as often as I do. It's commendable just how well these games have aged in the gameplay department. But before I get into that, there is a story to summarize, if you count Banana Theft as a story worth summarizing in the first place. The Kong family, consisting of Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Cranky Kong, Candy Kong, and Funky Kong, live peaceful lives on DK Island. The rest of the family is probably on vacation, and I don't blame them. The big-ass factory probably makes the island smell like shit. I remember one of the first pieces of video game trivia I ever learned was that the Donkey Kong here is not the same Donkey Kong from the arcade games. This dude grew old and became Cranky Kong, making this DK Jr. Where'd I learn this? The Snake Codec Conversations in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, also known as Super Smash Bros., the encyclopedia for kids with no friends. Anyways, one night King K. Rool, the ruler of the Kremlings, sets a plan into motion to steal Donkey Kong's coveted banana hoard. Donkey Kong understandably goes apeshit, you get it? And so he and Diddy set off on a journey to take down the Kremlin commanders and eventually King K. Rool to get their bananas back, cause apparently these other bananas aren't good enough. Truly a masterclass in storytelling. Yeah, it's silly, but it's a platformer made by Nintendo, what do you expect? There's no cutscenes to actually explain the narrative, you had to read the instruction manual for that information. You boot up the game and you're just thrown into the action without a second thought. That is, unless you're playing the GBA version, which adds cutscenes at the beginning of the game, after you beat a boss, and at the end. They're not amazing or anything, but they're a neat addition. Actually, let's talk about the GBA version for a minute. In many ways, this is the definitive version of Donkey Kong Country in terms of content, and in some cases, even production value. I already mentioned the cutscenes, but on top of that, there's an added time attack mode, a hero mode that's unlocked by getting 101% where you can only play as Diddy, a better save feature, new collectibles in the form of these snapshots scattered throughout the levels for you to find, minigames hosted by Funky and Candy involving fishing and dancing respectively, something I didn't know until doing research for this video. The Funky's fishing side game originated in the Game Boy Color port, alongside another minigame called Crosshair Cranky.
For his neutral special, he wields a gun.
Back to the GBA version. It also adds title cards for bonus rooms not unlike the ones in DKC 2 and 3, these trippy sequences when you enter a warp barrel, and likely a bunch of other stuff that I don't know about and or am too lazy to get footage of. And there are bonuses similar to these in the other 2 ports as well. With the plethora of content that the GBA versions have to offer, why did I opt to stick with the SNES versions? Well, a number of reasons. The SNES versions just feel better to play. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but they feel faster and the control is more satisfying to me. Graphically speaking, the DKC games on GBA were compromised drastically. Everything looks so bright. In some levels it could be beneficial to see where you're going, but because of that some of the atmosphere is lost. The sprite quality saw the biggest downgrade. The only reason I knew as a kid that the extra life balloons have DK's face drawn on them is because a render of them was included in a strategy guide I used to own for the game. I was 5 years old and already learning how to cheat my way through life. Seriously though, these sprites are probably the best Rare was able to do on the hardware, but they're a far cry compared to the original sprites, which was one of the selling points back in 1994. But if I had to choose the biggest reason why I prefer the SNES versions despite the lack of bonus content, it's the sound quality. The DKC soundtracks are glorious, which I will definitely talk about more during this retrospective. The GBA's sound chip does not do these songs justice. Some of them still sound pretty good, pretty much all of them were reworked with the audio constraints in mind, but it's not a sacrifice I'm willing to make anymore. These are clearly very solid and very impressive versions of these games, but I'll take the originals any day of the week even if I do have a lot of nostalgia for the GBA port. So what makes Donkey Kong Country stand out in a crowd of other great platformers from its time? You've got Mario, the standard albeit still very excellent contender with great controls, nice graphics, and memorable power-ups. There's Sonic, which emphasizes speed, physics-based gameplay to gain said speed, and huge levels chock full of goodies for you to find every time you play, for the most part. I feel that Donkey Kong Country, the series as a whole, has an identity made up of three main things: level variety, secrets, and difficulty. Let's work our way through each of them one at a time. Now, this isn't as obvious in the first game, but the DKC franchise does a great job at making every level feel fresh. A few may share similar themes like caverns, jungles, and factories, but no two levels are ever too similar that you can't tell them apart. Far from it, every level has a certain set piece, a certain gimmick that you can instantly remember and point to. And this kind of design started as early as DKC 1, though like I said, it's not as refined. Still quite a few noteworthy examples here though. Trick Track Trek and Tanked Up Trouble. Both of these levels have you riding atop a moving platform. In one you have to look out for enemies trying to Goomba stomp you from above, while in the other you have to manage the platform's fuel by collecting these fuel canisters. Clam City and Croctopus Chase. They're water levels dominated by two specific types of enemies: clams that can snipe you with pearls, and fast as fuck octopi that chase you throughout the stage. Gorilla Glacier and Ice Age Alley. You make your way across perilous chasms using the infamous spinning barrels in the former and swinging ropes in the latter. This may not seem like that big of a deal, but making a game where you're able to give every stage its own personality is no easy task. I love Mario World as much as anybody else, but I have a hard time differentiating all the generic grass-themed levels from one another every now and then. That never happens to me with the Donkey Kong Country games. I may not be able to memorize all the level names, although I think it's really clever how several of them are alliterative, but I can never forget each of their gimmicks. The jungle level with all the shooting barrels, the minecart level where you jump out of the carts to avoid enemies, the temple level straight out of Indiana Jones. They are all easily identifiable, sometimes even their bonus rooms make them memorable. Like I'll always remember Oil Drum Alley as that one stage with the bonus room hidden inside another bonus room. Actually, that's a good segue into one of the other defining traits of this franchise: secrets. Secrets everywhere. Again, this mainly applies to the sequels as they put a much greater focus on secrets. They're required to unlock optional content and in some cases different endings. Only thing you get for finding all the secrets in DKC 1 is approval from your verbally abusive father. Doesn't mean they aren't worth going over though. The levels in the DKC series reward players that take the time to examine and explore the surroundings with warp points that will take you to the end of the stage, although they are hidden extremely well, and bonus rooms filled to the brim with collectibles. Finding every bonus room in DKC 1 is required for getting 101% completion. Yes, I did say 101% because apparently 100% is for scrubs. Some get repeated, but surprisingly quite a few of them are one of a kind. However, as I mentioned, there's no big incentive for going out of your way to find them all. I never fully complete Donkey Kong Country whenever I replay it. I'll go for the bonus rooms I know the locations of by heart, but that's about it. Sometimes I'll flat out skip a bonus room because if I'm not getting anything substantial from playing through them, then they kinda just break the game's pacing. However, for this review, for the first time in my life, I did it. I found every bonus room in the first DKC game, and you know what? My point still stands, it's not worth it. The locations of some of these can be very cryptic, such as the aforementioned bonus room within the bonus room. Sometimes there'll be a trail of bananas that clue you into the whereabouts of nearby bonus rooms, but this isn't always the case. The GBA version actually has an advantage in this department, because you can actually see some of the bonus rooms that used to require leaps of faith. The most I got out of my 101% run was being absolutely swarmed with extra lives from all the bananas and balloons from the bonus rooms. Since this was my, 1000th time playing the game, this was overkill. But for a newcomer, these are most likely a godsend because of how hard these games can be. Donkey Kong Country is a platformer that assumes that you're well versed in the genre. This is great considering I didn't even know what a video game was prior to booting it up for the first time. I'm surprised I didn't develop early childhood anger issues. Compared to Mario, which, let's be fair, can provide a good challenge nearing the endgame, mainly 1 through 3 in World, DKC is much less forgiving. There's just a lot more things in these levels out to get you, ranging from flaming oil tanks, drivers going the wrong way on a one-way road, bottomless pits, and electrical issues. You've got to have quick reflexes, patience, and make split-second decisions at a moment's notice when the developers want to be cruel to you. So here's the thing, and this applies mostly to the SNES trilogy. DKC can have some good old classic bullshit design that can cause you to die more times than necessary, which significantly increases the game's difficulty. The biggest offender is the screen crunch. Graphics this detailed come at a cost, and that cost is huge character sprites that take up a bunch of screen real estate. Unless you know exactly what's ahead, there are quite a few occasions where you'll just be blindsided if you're going even remotely fast. Shoot, sometimes you don't even have a choice in how fast you want to move, leading to some sections boiling down to trial and error. This isn't as bad as I might be making it out to be, but it is a flaw that I have to comment on, and it's not going away anytime soon. But overall, the challenge in these games is fair. Most of my deaths are due to my own recklessness, because this game is not easy. I know this is incredibly ironic considering my history with the game and because part of what I try to do is convince others to play the games I cover, but I would never recommend DKC as somebody's first platformer, not even as their second or third. By the last 3 worlds, you're expected to have mastered all of the game's mechanics. Not only do the stages become increasingly more dangerous, but the Kremlin crew get a lot meaner. And a lot of the time it's the small guys that hurt the most, like these mini neckies with their super fast nut firing rate, and these jumping claptraps and loopy lights. The bigger enemies are no joke either, specifically the Crushas that come in 2 flavors. The first type can only be killed by Donkey, and the second type, exclusive to the last regular level in the game, can only be killed with barrels. And I can't stand these fuckers. They throw barrels so quickly that a lot of times I swear it must be some kind of glitch because I can just barely avoid them without getting hit. But really, it's the levels themselves that give you the most grief. The last platforming level, Platform Perils, took me, no joke, months to finish as a kid. To think I was so close to the end of the game, but these piece of shit buff crocodiles that you have to kill while standing on a small moving platform that gives way after a few seconds were my mortal enemy. If you want a prime example of how bad the screen crunch can be, look no further than Poison Pond. I always go extremely slow in this stage because you never know when a fish or squid can end your entire run without giving you a second to react. Snow Barrel Blast would probably be the hardest stage of all if not for this shortcut that I remember finding by complete accident when I was a kid, because I sucked that much at timing the barrel launches. Otherwise, you've got a long road of pain and misery ahead. Oh, and did I mention that you can only get hit once? Twice if you have both Kongs, but technically speaking, each ape has the endurance of a saltine cracker. How does this big ass gorilla lose to a tiny rat? If I'm making it sound like I hate the high challenge in these games, I don't. Quite the contrary actually, I just can't help but vent a little in these videos, you know? The combination of the difficulty along with the amazing level variety and exploration is what makes the Donkey Kong Country games so addicting and fun to me. I always want to see the next creative stage gimmick, scour each level for collectibles even when I don't get anything meaningful in return in the first game. I can't help it, man, I need my bananas. And experience that feeling of accomplishment, breathe that sigh of relief after seeing that exit sign and finally being able to stop clenching my controller with my sweaty palms. And it's all accompanied by some, while simple at first glance, very smartly thought out game mechanics to make the gameplay something worth coming back to time and time again. The Kongs control wonderfully in every DKC game, with the sole exception being Donkey Kong Country Returns, and that's in large part because of the controller. More on that at another time. Every action feels responsive, and screen crunch notwithstanding, the minute-to-minute gameplay is extremely quick. But the best thing about the gameplay is the roll. Not only is it a good way of dealing with enemies when you don't feel like jumping, but you get this big speed boost after rolling into an enemy that can be chained together with other rolls and lets you carry some serious momentum if you know where to do it. This never gets boring. It's such a basic move that proves to be incredibly useful and entertaining to pull off. The roll can also defy the laws of gravity by letting the Kongs jump out of said roll even in midair. And this isn't a glitch or anything, it's an intended maneuver that is needed to get certain items. Honestly, I think that the roll is what separates a decent player from a skillful player in Donkey Kong Country. Cause I know I rarely used the roll back then and I was dog shit at the game. Now I can't imagine playing the game without it, and it only elevates the already solid gameplay. Can't believe it's taken this long to bring focus to them, but Donkey and Diddy have some key differences that make Diddy the clear best character to use. Donkey is slower, slightly worse at jumping, and is a bigger target than Diddy. Only advantage he has is strength, meaning he can kill some select enemies by jumping on them, whereas Diddy cannot. He can also pound the ground to uncover hidden goodies. If you want to slowly and tediously check every pixel in the game for bananas and maybe a Kong letter here and there, then be my guest. In the meantime, I'll spend my time not using the most useless ability in these games. Diddy's reduced strength isn't really a handicap since he has other methods of dealing with tougher enemies. The only reason I consider using Donkey instead of him is when I need to carry a barrel over my head. Diddy holds barrels directly in front of him, which I prefer overall since I can just run into enemies and use the barrel as a shield. But in some rare situations, being able to throw the barrel at an arc without having to awkwardly jump is better. Along the way, the duo can get some help from other members in the Kong family. Cranky Kong gives you tips and hints regarding how to find some hidden bonus rooms when he's not beating you. Funky lets you travel between the island's 6 major areas, and Candy can save your progress. They have no impact on the core gameplay, but that's where animal buddies come in. Mario didn't get a companion until Super Mario World, but here we get 5 to help us out. Rambi the Rhinoceros can mow down enemies and bust down breakable walls with ease. He also has the most infuriating bonus game. You can play these after collecting 3 matching Animal Buddy tokens for a chance to score extra lives. Every 100 tokens is an extra life. There's a hidden giant token in each stage that doubles your current token count. So the trick is to nab as many of the smaller ones as you can before going after the big boy in the time limit. Problem is, the timer in Rambi's bonus room must be on crack because it goes down way too fast. I always just barely make it to the big token, and if you fall trying to make your way to it, then you're fucked. Anyways, On Guard the Swordfish is pretty much just underwater Rambi, though his main method of attack can be a little finicky since he does this charge automatically when he gets close to an enemy. If you aren't lined up correctly to hit the enemy with the tip of his nose though, then say goodbye to On Guard. Winky the Frog can jump really high but has miserable ground control since he's always hopping around, so jumping can feel very loose. Espresso the Ostrich can fly. Sort of, you won't gain any altitude, but you can get some serious airtime nonetheless. Unfortunately, he can't kill any enemies, but at least you can ignore some of the smaller ones. Oh, never mind, I guess just when he feels like it. Finally, Squawks the Parrot only appears in torchlight trouble to light the way ahead. Just be careful not to turn around if you're playing on version 1.0 unless you want a seizure. The Animal Buddies are alright, they're nowhere near remarkable. There's almost never a time when I'm like, damn, I really wish I had Winky right now. And I think it's just because the Kongs do fine on their own. It'd be a different story if you could actually take them outside of the levels you find them in, but not every level is designed to accommodate every Animal Buddy. I always try to have Yoshi with me in Super Mario World because I can actually use him in more than 6 select stages. Also, he's great for mid-air jumps. I'm surprised that the SNES trilogy on a technical standpoint holds up as well as it does. Like, I don't think the original Mortal Kombat games look very good by today's standards, though that may be because they went for a more realistic approach with their visuals than the silly Ape game did. But Donkey Kong Country not only looks damn impressive, but it also sounds fantastic. Visually, they struck a great balance between 2D and 3D, where you can tell that these sprites all started off as 3D renders, but there wasn't a whole lot that was compromised when they had to be made into 2D assets. The backgrounds are really nice, environments pack a lot of detail, some stages have cool effects that simulate different times of day and weather conditions. But what I'm a really big fan of is how Rare injected a lot of this game's charm through the animation. The Kongs have different reactions when they win and lose bonus games, they do a little dance after completing a level, they lose balance when close to an edge. Even the enemies have a lot of personality. A lot of that is in their death animations, but hey, it's amusing. The bosses were given more attention animation-wise, and that's all the praise they'll be getting from me, cause not counting the final boss, they're pathetically easy. Seriously, one of them just gives up. I'm getting close to wrapping things up, so it's time to gush about the soundtrack. And just like a couple of other things I've talked about, the soundtrack in DKC 1 is noticeably weaker when compared to the soundtracks in the sequels. Oh, it's still really good, which should speak for the quality of future music. It's just that this game's OST is mostly made up of atmospheric pieces. The songs are relatively subdued, and that vibe suits this game fairly well considering the settings don't get too crazy. This is music that's fitting for jungles, caves, and snowy mountains. If you've seen my Metroid videos though, you probably know I just prefer more upbeat songs, especially in platformers. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate and even adore some of the melodies here. Aquatic Ambience is one of the best songs in the entire series and one of the best water level themes in all of gaming. Life in the Mines, amazing tune. Misty Menace, super creepy. Fear Factory, an absolute banger. David Wise did an outstanding job, and the highlight of his work is Gangplank Galleon. It starts off as the most generic pirate song you could imagine, but then it morphs into this epic arrangement fitting for a final battle. Such a great beat and use of the electric guitar. And now that I've brought him up, King K. Rool is such a cool villain. He has an unforgettable design with a menacing aura to him. This man towers over the Kongs, and he doesn't pull any punches. Without a doubt, the only truly great boss fight in this game, made even better by the fake out ending that I remember caught me so off guard the first time I fought him. When I finally beat him for real though so many years ago, it was surreal. It took me about 1 year, maybe closer to 2 years, to beat Donkey Kong Country, and yes, this was also the first game I ever finished. I felt so proud of myself, and for the first time in my life, I experienced that oh so bittersweet feeling one gets when they beat a game they fall in love with. And to this day, I love Donkey Kong Country. It has held up sensationally well, barring a couple of janky bits here and there, no doubt caused by hardware limitations, but in spite of its minor flaws, it is still a very respectable 2D platformer with great gameplay, incredibly solid design, and outstanding production values. Like, no joke guys, the music in these games is so good. If anything, just go out and listen to the soundtrack. Oh. And while I think the final battle theme is the best song overall, my personal favorite is, and always will be, the one playing in the background right now, Credit Concerto, the song that played when I completed my first video game, and the first video game song to give me goosebumps. Donkey Kong Country holds a special place in my heart, and I hope you enjoyed hearing me ramble about it. This script ended up being about a page and a half longer than I expected, and just letting you know, future videos might not be this long. This is the first video in the series, and I'm assuming that's why it ended up being as long as it is. But what the hell do I know, right? Next time we meet, I'll be looking at Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. Well, maybe it'll be either that or the follow-up to my 1000 subscriber rant I uploaded recently. If you're watching this and are interested in being a part of it, I'm planning on having a Q&A section in that video, so ask me anything you want in the comments below. It can be anything you want, gaming related or otherwise, as long as it's not inappropriate of course. So look forward to both of those videos in the near future. Hopefully. Until then, be safe, take care, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.